Okay. My name is Jessica Wilkerson. I attend Georgetown College, and this is my capstone research project titled Project Based Learning. Is the result worth the total teacher mind shift? So, my research question to guide my study was: how does a project based learning instructional environment promote student content retention when used in a social studies classroom? To introduce my project, I will be using data from Campbellsburg Elementary because, in looking at past data from the fifth grade students there, I found that they are struggling in the area of social studies on our state standardized tests. I felt like this could be because of several reasons, but the one that I felt like specifically targeted our students was the lack of engagement in our social studies classroom. So, this study will assess how increasing motivation and engagement through project based learning will affect student growth in social studies, comprehension, and content retention. I chose project based learning because project based learning requires that students work together through collaborative environments and communicate their learning to an authentic audience. And according to one study, even though this approach for designing curriculum caught momentum from educators in the areas of science and engineering, there's current research to document the power of project based learning on other subjects, such as social studies and literacy. And of course, in this study, we're going to focus on its effects in social studies classrooms. By providing students with an integrated approach to learning, also a consistent teaching model, the workshop method, and giving them real world application, I hope to increase student achievement on summative assessments, as well as increase student retention of the social studies content over an extended period of time. In my review of the literature for this project, I found several pieces of research that supported project based learning in the classroom, but unfortunately, I found that a lot of it centered around literacy. Um, However, in my past years of experience, I have found that what strategies are good in one content area generally translate to another area of content. And so I decided that I would take these positive strategies and I would apply them to the social studies classroom and adapt them so that they could be had there. The Hovey and Ferguson in particular brought to light maybe a struggle or two, but then um, helped me to realize the importance of project based learning and what I was doing, because their study explored secondary teachers' perceptions about project based learning and its benefits and challenges. But ultimately, as the quote says here, the advantages of using PBL discussed by the participants were improved teacher student and student to student relationships, skill development, and real world practice, which I think that every teacher would agree are three very key components to student success in the classroom. You'll also find that maybe an oddball here is the Lucy Calkins Guide to the Reading Workshop. Um, we as a district have been mandated, the last 2 years, I guess. This is our third year using the Calkins writing curriculum. Um, but we also have the option to use it in reading. And I found in the book there that while it's an introduction and guide to the units of study, it's also step by step implementation guides to the workshop method of teaching. And because the district relied so heavily on this, or as a focus area, I guess 2 years ago, we now are also mandated to use the workshop model as a structure in our classroom for each subject area. Um, And it's because of the quote here, by using the workshop model as a predictable structure for both whole group and small group settings, students are given direct instruction and feedback around highly effective strategies so that they are able to, and in this case, it's tackle complex texts and writing tasks. However, we want to see that also translate into the social studies classroom. So that's why I've combined project-based learning with the workshop model, not only because it's a mandate, but because it's a regimented structure that will help our study to be more comparative as far as like the teaching strategies, with the structure kind of not being a factor there. The theoretical framework that I have here is based on a constructivist theory. The theory states that as people solve problems using their schema and exploration and recognize the effects of their actions, they develop their own understanding. And this makes learning an active process that requires the learner to change in some way. According to Piaget, people only deeply understand what they have constructed. And constructivist theorists state that students must build their understanding of a new topic on schema that they already have. In one article, by Carpenter, it states that rather than simply accepting new information, students interpret what they see, hear, or do in relation to what they already know. And this theory has become the basis for project-based learning. Um, um, in project-based learning classrooms, students are asked to build their own knowledge. And for this reason, the project-based learning approach focuses on doing about something instead of learning about something. And part of the appeal to this for me is that it when the knowledge is applied to a social studies classroom, we can begin to understand why students may not be retaining the content as expected, I guess, because a read and respond strategy for teaching is often used in a social studies classroom, and just based on a lot of this research and the constructivist theory itself, this kind of teaching doesn't lend itself to these authentic opportunities that promote growth in student learning, or nor does it help increase the knowledge that the child might already have on a topic. This is where PBL gives the students the perfect opportunity to practice these strategies, while it also gives the teacher time to explicitly focus on the instruction of the strategy or the content that they wish to deliver, which grows or gives new schema to the student, and hopefully thereby increasing student understanding and retention of the content. So our participants in the setting, of course, is fifth grade students at Campbellsburg Elementary in Campbellsburg, Kentucky. Our fifth grade is structured in a departmentalized fashion, so the social studies content is taught by one teacher. I thought this was great because that would ensure that the instruction is consistent across the entire fifth grade student body. It reduces the possibility of a variance in the content delivery or the instruction that could ultimately affect the student understanding or retention of the content. Our focus group of fifth graders consists of 41% females and 59% males. So it's a little boy heavy in the classrooms, but it's broken up into two classes. In its entirety, the focus group also has a 39% free and reduced lunch status and a 6% special education or IEP population. I chose to study project-based learning in the social studies classroom because of the low number of proficient and distinguished scores as compared to the state of Kentucky on the 2016 and 17 score report card. Again, this was not our newest data, but it was because of the newest data that I really started focusing on project-based learning and its effects in social studies. Because according to the report card 2 years ago, the novice percentage of 21.3% was double that of the state of Kentucky at 10.3%. I felt like this was concerning, and I wondered if engagement in the social studies classroom would increase these scores. At the time, I was teaching fifth grade, and we discussed, we did not have departmentalization at the time. We were all teaching social studies. And so we decided that one way that we could maybe combat this deficit was maybe to integrate some project-based learning instruction into some of the units of the social studies classroom for the remainder of the year. So, of course, recently we got the new assessment data and we noticed a large decrease in novice percentages across the board, but especially in the social studies assessment scores. And we'll see that in the following table. This led myself in particular, but also the fifth grade team. If project-based learning instruction had been implemented the entire year, would we have seen an even greater increase in student scores? So this wondering is the foundation of my research and the guiding question for my study. How does a project-based learning instructional environment promote student content understanding and retention when used in a social studies classroom? You can see here the comparisons of the 2016-17 year and the 2017-2018 school year. There was not a perfect growth across the board. You can see that we had 21.3% of novice students as opposed to 14.1% in the 2017-2018 school year. So that's a decrease in 14.1%, which was huge as far as novice reduction was concerned. Now, our apprentice, of course, because our novice went to apprentice, a lot of them went up 11.3%. However, you can see that our proficient did and our distinguished by a little bit did go down. We had a reduction over our proficient and distinguished with a total of 4.1%. Could this be, this raises the questions, could this be due to the fact that we did not do project-based learning the whole year? Was there just a difference in instruction because we had 2 new teachers? It just could have been a very big, there could have been other factors, but ultimately we just wondered if that growth for especially our, we'll call them novice kids, could that have been because of the engagement that they found in the project-based learning units? For my methodology, I chose a mixed methods research study that includes both qualitative and quantitative research methods. For my qualitative instruments, I will have pre and post assessments to gauge student understanding before and after. It will take a quick look at what the students knew before the unit began and then, of course, afterward. We'll also have a post-unit on-demand prompt to rate retention. This will be given significantly after the units wrap up and they have begun another unit so that we can, thoroughly assess, are they remembering what they learned rather than just that summative assessment right after the unit. And then we'll also have student formative assessments and exit slips that will guide teacher instructional decisions throughout the unit, as per usual. As far as quantitative instruments are concerned, we'll have, I messed those up. They're backwards. We will have, these are the qualitative and the quantitative is the other one. I will fix that. But for the quantitative, we will have, qualitative, we will have teacher annotated conferring notes from individual and small group conferences. We will also have student engagement surveys. And then we will have student self-assessments to gauge kind of how the students are feeling about their content understanding. I do feel that even though it's a mixed methods research design, that I will rely most heavily on the qualitative research to guide my analysis when actually answering my question to gauge student retention and then summative assessment knowledge. The research procedures are actually pretty straightforward. In order to conduct my study, I decided to have the social studies teacher teach 2 units within an 8-week period. This will allow for 4 weeks for each unit and will also allow enough time to determine student retention. The workshop model will be used as a structure for both units. Unit 1 will be a unit on Native Americans. The students will be given a pre-assessment that consists of 5 multiple choice questions, 5 true-false questions, 8 fill-in-the-blank, and 1 extended response. This will be the same assessment that they're given as a post-assessment. This unit, as with project-based learning structure, will begin with an entry event, and students will be given the guiding question, how can we as fifth graders create a learning experience for the entire school on Native American culture? Again, this sets up the need for the students in the school to learn about Native American culture. It also sets up the authentic audience for when they do their exhibition of their work. The guiding question will lead students to create some sort of an exhibition that they will present to an authentic audience. Ideally, we will have students kind of do something along the lines of, again, project-based learning is student-driven, but just for an example, maybe they will host a Native Americans night where they will do a wax museum, or they will present, they will dress up and present some sort of Native American lore, or maybe they will demonstrate some traditions from Native American culture, something of that nature. The mini lessons, again, for the workshop model, will be guided discussion around Native American tribes, their traditions and rituals, types of homes, natural resources they had and their uses of those, and how it is we've come to know these facts about Native American culture using artifacts and traditions passed through the generations. For composing time, students will research Native American life to complete their exit slips as well as their project or presentation to the school. During this time, the teacher will circulate or pull small groups in order to reinforce instruction, clear up misconceptions, and meet individual learning needs. During reflection time, it'll be based on student needs and teacher noticings. This time will be short but reflective, both for the teacher and for the student. This is a time that is good for the students to discuss next steps and for the teacher to think about the direction for their instruction. Unit 2 is similar, but it will have a more traditional teaching approach. This unit will begin with a pre-assessment in which they will be asked content questions in 4 different ways. It will be set up just like Unit 1's pre- and post-assessment. It will also be taught in a workshop model, but the composing time will look a little different from the other unit. For this, the mini lessons will be about explorers, their discoveries, and how it applies to us today. Just some general modeling from the teacher about how they will complete their composing time, and it will introduce some new information. During composing, students will complete traditional formative assessment activities, for example, worksheets, read and respond, writing prompts, passages and comprehension questions, and teacher-created exit slips. During this time, the teacher will circulate, clearing up misconceptions and supporting students with any needs they might have finishing their work. This might include small groups, individual, one-on-one time. And the grades taken from these activities will be how the teacher collects the data and then drives their future instruction. During reflection time, students and teachers will discuss the positive and negative experiences during work time, as well as any help they might need going forward. Following these 2 units, they will also have a retention assessment. After both units are complete and a new unit has begun, I will revisit the content learned in these 2 units by giving an extensive on-demand prompt that will assess retention of the content of units 1 and 2. Here you'll see my list of references and where I gathered the information to perform my study. And I just thank you for your time today.